Hello there, friend. What are you doing here in the South?
A trip.
A trip, you say? Huh, well, suit yourself. Oh, hold on there, friend. Why, wait just a moment. Sit a spell, and I got some stories to tell you.
What kind of stories?
Well, South stories, of course. These here be tales that are voodoo, cannibalism, and evil rednecks out for blood.
Are they real?
Sure thing, they're real. I'm telling you, aren't I? Sit your ass down, grab a beer, and listen to some tales. And let me tell you a story about a very special redneck named Bubba and his howling good time fighting the devil himself. Bubba the Redneck Werewolf is set in a Cracker County, where every single southern stereotype is true. But follow Bubba, a weak idiot who can't hold down a job, with Bubba getting drunk in a bar and fighting his ex-high school lover's new boyfriend in the parking lot after drunkenly trying to beat up his car. Bubba loses. Bubba then is visited by the devil and is given the opportunity to ask for anything. Bubba asks to be strong, brave, and have more hair. He also gets a free toaster. This is what leads Bubba to getting the powers of the werewolf, which he abuses. But the devil is now in town, and he is running everyone's life. Now Bubba is told by the town that he needs to stop this mess before the devil takes over the world. Bubba is told by Biker Bob to find Nostrovia, who will help him stop the devil. Bubba goes to a wise and gassy fortune teller who tells him where to find Nostrovia. Bubba finds him, accidentally kills him. No matter though, since Bubba invites the devil to the bar where they gamble. Bubba wins, but the devil refuses. Bubba finds out that the devil's weakness is for you to say his name when the devil tells him. Everyone in the bar says random names, including Bubba, but all are wrong. But then Biker Bob enters and says the devil's name, Bladrick Rasputinstein III, Jr. Now the world is saved, and is all thanks to Bubba. So y'all like the story?
Yeah, but I got a few things to say.
What?
Just a few things, like a review.
Bubba the Redneck Werewolf is a comedy film directed by Brendan Jackson Rogers and written by Stefan Byra. The film is based off the comic of the same name, written by Mitch Hyman, who also plays the devil and is the best part of the movie. The film is, in my opinion, funny, and I would recommend it for a fun watch if you enjoy raunchy, stupid humor. The film is full of southern tropes, right down to the cousin fucking jokes. The humor is edgy and, like I said, raunchy, with one joke just being the main cast killing college students because they thought they were zombies. And the film is full of gore. One fight scene is just Bubba ripping and tearing dudes, dismembering them, and just winds up eating them. The acting isn't the best aside from the devil and Bubba, but the jokes are, again, in my opinion, funny, and the movie is so stupid that you can't help but love it. Also, there was definitely a lot of passion put into this. Special effects are good, aside from the few bad CGI bits. Cinematography is nothing amazing. It's a full-on Southsploitation too, with the whole movie basically just being one big southern joke, with all the stereotypes. 8 out of 10.
Okay then, and next, we're gonna have a tale from New Orleans about what happens when you kill a lady's man. Why? You get a horde of voodoo zombies and a demon named Baron Zombie. That be Sugar Hill. Sugar Hill is set in New Orleans and follows the woman, Sugar Hill, who is married to wealthy nightclub owner Langston. We open with a voodoo party in the swamp, chanting and dancing all around, but all is not as it seems, since this is only an event at the Club Haiti. Sugar and Langston talk and joke around lovingly. Then Fabulous and a group of men come to speak with Langston to negotiate with him selling the club to their boss Morgan, but Langston refuses. The gang leaves, but when Langston leaves for his car, they jump him and kill him. Sugar finds his body, and this is where her warpath begins. She seeks out Mama at her old swamp mansion so she may help her see Baron Zombie, so she may obtain power to get her revenge. Mama takes Sugar to Zombie, and Sugar makes a deal with him. A bride for an army. Zombie grants Sugar her horde of the undead and follows her on her bloodbath. Sugar systematically kills all the members of Morgan's gang. Zombies decapitate them. She feeds them to pigs. She forces them to kill themselves. She uses voodoo dolls. She feeds them to snakes. Zombies claw them to death, all in the service of vengeance. And as Sugar kills, her old friend Detective Valentine hunts down a mysterious killer. Although no matter how hard he searches, or how much he learns, nothing will stop Sugar from getting her revenge. Finally, Sugar baits Morgan and his woman to Mama's mansion, and leads Morgan to his watery demise. Zombie did his end of the bargain, and now it's Sugar's turn. She offers up Morgan's woman as Zombie's new bride. Zombie leaves her, and Sugar is left in the world without her man. This ends the tales of Sugar Hill with her voodoo zombie army. Y'all like?
I got a few more things to say.
Again?
Sugar Hill is a 1974 American horror blaxploitation / Southsploitation zombie film. Directed by Paul Maslansky, Sugar Hill is the oddball of the lineup here. While it is a Southsploitation, like I said before, it's also a blaxploitation. It is very light on both, however, and could be seen as a good intro to both genres since it's not heavy on either side. However, this movie does fall flat on some things, but it's still a decent movie. Sugar Hill is a zombie movie where the zombies do not look like zombies, but they do work like how they did in the old Haiti zombie lore, which is cool. The kills are decent, but not enough gore to really give you a visceral reaction, and are over way too quickly sometimes. Now, what makes this Southsploitation? Well, it's the fact that there is voodoo being used as the main method of killing, and voodoo is commonly seen as a southern thing, especially with black southern culture, which is why it's both a blaxploitation and a Southsploitation. This one is light on Southsploitation, with it only really using the voodoo angle and being set in the South, but it is a decent film overall, and I would recommend it to anybody trying to get into exploitation cinema who just wants something fun and kind of popcorn movie. 6 out of 10.
You gonna do this for all of them?
Yes,
Why?
because the script says so.
Oh man, My script's only got my lines.
Mine has all of them, even this.
Damn nerd-ass script writing folks. Anywho's, let's move on to the next tale. This one is about what happened when you take a trip to the wrong part of the South. I calls it Deliverance. Deliverance is a story about what happens when the outsiders travel too far and too deep into the southern world. The soft, the naive, the arrogant city folk are now deep in a dangerous place run by violent and vile people. Our characters are Ed Gentry, a graphic artist and one of 4 main characters. Insurance salesman Bobby Tripp, soft drink executive Drew Ballinger, and landlord Lewis Meth. Physical Fit Outdoors promoted the canoe trip. Our friends leave to travel to Georgia for a canoe trip in the Hahalawasi River in the remote Georgia wilderness, expecting to have fun and see the glory of nature before the river valley is flooded by the upcoming construction of a dam and lake. They stop at a gas station run by locals where they fill up, ask where they can find someone to drive their cars to the other end of the river, and Drew engages a young boy in a musical duet, with the boy on banjo and Drew on his guitar. Although this duel appears mutual and Drew enjoys it, the boy does not acknowledge him, and prompted for a congratulatory handshake, which keeps in line with how unfriendly and dismissive the locals are here. The group gives their cars to a father and son and then leave for the river. The group splits into 2 canoes and have a fun day on the water before camping for the night. The next morning, the 2 are split up while on the water. The occupants of one canoe, Bobby and Ed, land briefly and encounter a pair of mountain men emerging from the woods, one carrying a shotgun and missing 2 front teeth, just like my Uncle Jed. Following a verbal altercation, Bobby is forced, at gunpoint, to strip. His ear twisted to bring him to his hands and knees, and then ordered to squeal like a pig before being raped dead, bound to a tree and held at gunpoint by the other man. Lewis and Drew come across this and they save the 2. They shoot the one who raped Bobby with a bow and the toothless man escapes. They try to figure out what to do and they decide to bury the body somewhere secluded so he won't be found and make their escape. They get back in their boats and put on their life jackets, except for Drew, who doesn't put on his life jacket due to being distraught after killing him. Drew falls off the boat, and the whole group wipe out on a rocky rapid. They wash up on the wall of a cliff. Ed and Bobby are fine, but Lewis is hurt bad. Lewis said he was shot. Lewis tells Ed that he needs to climb the cliff wall to the top and see if they can find the shooter, who is most definitely the Toothless Man. Ed climbs up with Lewis's bow and almost falls once reaching the top. He hides out until the next morning, when the stalker appears in the top of the cliff with a rifle. Looking down into the gorge where Lewis and Bobby are located, Ed clumsily shoots and manages to kill him, accidentally stabbing himself with one of his own spare arrows in the process. The dead man apparently has all his teeth, but on closer inspection is revealed to be wearing dentures. Ed and Baba weigh down the body in the river to ensure it will never be found, and repeat the same with Drew's body, which they encounter downriver. Upon finally reaching the small town of Antry, where the family took their vehicles as promised, and our heroes take Lewis to the hospital, the men carefully concoct a cover story for the authorities about Drew's death and disappearance being an accident, lying about the ordeal to Sheriff Ballard in order to escape a possible double murder charge. The sheriff does not believe them, but has no evidence to arrest them and tells the men to never come back to town. The trio vow to keep their story of death and survival a secret for the rest of their lives. At home in the middle of the night, Ed awakes, startled by a nightmare in which a bloated hand rises from the lake. These events of that trip haunt our group for the rest of their lives. So, do you like that one?
Yes, but
Oh, God fucking damn it, not again.
Deliverance is a 1972 American thriller film produced and directed by John Boorman, and is an adaptation of the novel of the same name by James Dickey. Deliverance is a very effective thriller that never lets up once the ball starts rolling, and the acting, cinematography, music, and everything are good and just make this film even better. Actually, I would say it's all great, to be honest. It is definitely the best film of this lineup, and a great example of Southsploitation. Southerners are portrayed as rude, creepy, dirty, violent, untrustworthy, and dim, you know, like a Southsploitation movie would do. While the family that drives their cars to town does so, they are not very kind to our characters, which is in keeping with the tropes of the genre. Deliverance is pure, unapologetic Southsploitation and a great thriller. It's not an over-the-top, gory horror movie, it's a smartly done thriller, but it's also Southsploitation. Although Drew not wearing his life jacket was a dumb choice on his part. 10 out of 10.
Well, that was a mighty good review on your point, thank you.
You're welcome, but we really need to get going.
Nonsense, friend. Stories are just beginning. Next is a tale all about when city folk take a wrong turn.
Show starts in 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Double Bixel. I run the Neon Realms YouTube channel. And did you know that only 13.7% of you are subscribed? That's right. Only 13.7% of my viewers are actually subscribed to my YouTube channel. Now, I'm glad you're watching my videos, but not subscribing to me does not support me whatsoever. If you subscribe to me, you're able to see my videos when they're released. Granted, if you press that little bell icon when you subscribe to be notified every time I release a new video. Subscribing to me really helps me a lot, just so you know. Legend has it that if you subscribe to me, one day I might take this mask off and actually be able to breathe properly. And you don't want me to suffocate to death, do you? Please, before this video ends, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell notification, and click all to be notified every time I release a new video. You also have the option to personalize your notifications, but you want to know when I post all the time, right? So press that little all option. Leaving a comment also really helps me to understand what I can do better or what I already did right, so I don't fuck something up in the next video. Liking and disliking a video also helps me greatly. It shows me that you either like my videos or don't like my videos. Remember, only you can change that 13.7% to 100%. And prevent wildfires. But let's be honest, this is more important than the wilderness.
Still plenty of time to come and be served at the refreshment center before showtime. Show starts in 1 minute.
Please remember to replace the speaker on the post when you leave the theater.
And now, on with the show.
Wrong Turn is a story set in West Virginia about when city folk go down to the wrong road and are hunted by those who live in the forest. College students Rich and Haley are rock climbing in a remote forest, West Virginia. When Rich reaches the top, he makes no attempt to help Haley, who is struggling. He is then suddenly murdered. Something then begins to yank Haley up the cliff, forcing her to cut the rope and fall to the ground. She attempts to escape, but gets caught in a line of barbed wire and is pulled back into the woods, never to be seen again. Good riddance. These murders are only amongst many the newspapers have covered with stories of other people gone missing in these woods. 3 days later, doctor in training Chris drives through the mountains of Greenbrier County on his way to an important business meeting. A traffic jam is caused by a chemical spill and forces him to turn back. He calls someone on his cell about how he'll be late, but he has no service. He finds and stops at a trash gas station to find a phone. When the only one there is broken, he asks for directions from the elderly owner. When the man gives him nothing, he decides to go down a different route through a dirt road to Bear Mountain. He collides with the stationed SUV whose tires have been punctured while driving too fast down the road. The vehicle belongs to a group of youths on a camping trip. Jesse, a couple named Carly and Scott, Evan and Francine, who soon realized that their tires were punctured was not an accident, after Jesse finds a strip of barbed wire laying across the road. Evan and Francine stay to watch the cars as the others go to find help. But both of them are later murdered by someone. The others find an isolated cabin and go inside to use the phone. But they are horrified to find human body parts in the house and attempt to leave before forcing themselves to hide inside when the owners return home. 3 cannibalistic, inbred mountain people enter the cabin with Francine's corpse, and the hiding group watch as Francine's body is dismembered and prepare for dinner. The group escapes when the owners fall asleep, but they awaken just as our group escapes. They run to a field full of old cars. They are followed by 3 inbreds. They devise a plan to make a distraction so the others can get to the inbred truck. Chris plays bait and is shot in the leg, so Scott plays bait too and lets the others and Chris to get in the truck. They find Scott and yell for him, but Scott soon is killed by arrows. This causes Carly to become very depressed. They drive until reaching a dead end where the truck gets stuck, and they move on foot. They find a radio tower and climb up to find a radio and a first aid kit, which they use to patch up Chris's leg. As they get the signal, the inbreds come by and hear them. The inbreds try to climb in, but our trio blocks the door. The inbreds then burn the tower. Our trio decides to jump onto the trees, and they succeed. They sneak through the treetops, but are spotted by the inbreds. One climbs up with them and kills iCarly. Chris and Jesse devise a plan to use a branch to knock the inbreds out of the trees. It works, and they get away to the waterfall, where they camp for the night. They hike in the early morning, but are intercepted by an inbred. Chris is hit down a hill, and Jesse is taken. Chris sees a patrol car and stops it. The cop says he's been looking for him, while Chris tries to explain what's happening, but the cop is killed by an inbred. Chris hides under the car, and the inbred steals it and drives off with Chris hanging on underneath. They arrive at the cabin once again. Jesse is on the butcher table, and the inbreds plan on killing her and eating her. But then Chris crashes through the wall, running one of them over. He and Jesse fight the inbreds and escape, but not before blowing up the cabin with the fuel tanks on the back of the patrol car. Our 2 heroes leave the forest alive, but scared for their lives. Late at night, a cop arrives at the ruins of the cabin, looking for the dead cop, and is killed by the surviving inbred. The end. Alright, what is it you got to say?
Wrong Turn is a 2003 slasher film directed by Rob Schmidt and written by Alan B. McElroy. The film is your typical slasher film format, with teens being killed off one by scary killers. Really, it's nothing new or special, and it's still a good slasher romp, but the film is also a shameless Southsploitation riot. The main Deep South characters we see in the movie are inbred cannibals, and the minor ones are rude dudes on the road and an unhelpful dirty old man. Pure Southsploitation characters. The movie and its many sequels all take place in West Virginia.
West Virginia,
and it doesn't really try to hide it. If you want to know what Southsploitation horror is, this is a good example. Although the movie itself is not special, it still has some great gory kills and is a lot of fun. 7 out of 10.
Shoot them, it just works.
I only got 1 shot left. Come on. Motherfuckers. Just die.
West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home.
And then you run wires that connect them all, and again, it just works.
Okay, Dan, you ready for your next story?
We need to get going.
No, you gots to stay.
She's right. Take care.
You forced my hand, city folks. You's a part of the story now. Good morning, kids. You all ready for the next story? Don't worry. I will take that off once it be his turn to speak. Now, this story will be all about when a father loses his son and the lengths he'll go to for revenge. Pumpkinhead is a story about how far a father will go to get revenge after losing their son, and how revenge is not good. In 1957, a man running from something in the swamp seeks sanctuary at a man named Tom's cabin. But Tom refuses and threatens to shoot him if he does not leave. Watching through a window, Tom's son Ed witnesses the man caught and killed by a monster. In the present now, 1988, Ed Harley, the boy from earlier on who saw the monster kill that man back in 1988, or no, this is now 1988, I'm sorry, I'm getting this all messed up. Ed Harley, the boy from before, owns a small store in the country and lives with his young son Billy. He leaves his young son Billy alone at the store while he runs an errand. A group of teenage campers stop by Harley's, and while riding their dirt bikes recklessly, they mortally injure Billy. One teen, Steve, stays with the boy until his father's return. 3 leave to look for a phone, and 2 flee the scene. At their cabin, the campers fight whether or not to call the police. Chris and Tracy went to call the cops for help, but Joel, who is personally responsible for the boy's injury and is on probation for a similar incident, rips out the phone cord, knocks Chris unconscious, and locks him and Tracy in the closet to stop them from contacting the authorities. Ed finds his son, and Steve tries to explain, but Ed just glares at him. Later, Ed is at home trying to tend to his son, but sadly his son dies from his injuries. Ed goes to his friend from earlier and asking about a woman. He refuses to tell him, but the man's son helps Ed and helps him find that woman. Ed speaks to Haggis, who is this strange woman, and offers her gold. But she says resurrecting the dead is not within her power. Instead, Ed says that he wants revenge. The witch agrees to help, but warns him that vengeance comes with a terrible price. Haggis tells Ed where to go and how to summon Pumpkinhead. Ed goes to an old graveyard in the mountains, surrounded by pumpkins, and digs up a corpse and brings it back to the witch's home. The witch uses blood from father and son and resurrects the corpse, which rises as the gigantic, spindly, demonic monster known as Pumpkinhead. Ed then buries his son and returns home, and sees a vision of his son. One of the girls, Maggie, hears a voice whispering her name. Seemingly hypnotized, she follows the voice outside the cabin. Steve brings her out of her trance, but Pumpkinhead kills him. Ed Harley begins to experience remorse for his actions after seeing a murder through the demon's eyes and determines to find a way to stop Pumpkinhead. While the campers search for Steve, Pumpkinhead drags away Maggie, and Ed again experiences the ensuing murder. He returns to the witch and begs her to stop this monster's action. The witch says that Pumpkinhead cannot be stopped, and Ed will die if he interferes with the killing spree. This is the price he must pay for his revenge. Joel finds and confronts Pumpkinhead with a machete, but it swats him aside and drags off Kim, whom it drops off a fatal height. 3 remaining campers unsuccessfully beg the locals for help. Ed arrives with a shotgun and shoots Pumpkinhead, but when Joel checks to see if the creature is still alive, it grabs a fallen rifle and impales him with it. The son of Ed's friend, named Bunce, helps the 2 remaining teens, even though his father told him not to involve himself. Tracy, Chris, and Bunt reach an abandoned church. Bunt relates the legend of the monster of Pumpkinhead, explaining that the monster avenges one who was wronged. If anyone tries to stop Pumpkinhead or help his victims, that person becomes marked and will be killed by Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead finds the tree at the church and gives chase, but only after destroying the cross in the church. Chris's dirt bike fails to start after Pumpkinhead removes the drive chain. He lifts up the bike with Chris still on it and throws it against the tree. Meanwhile, Ed brings Tracy and Bunt to his cabin to keep them safe. Pumpkinhead then drags Chris back to Harley's house, where Tracy, Bunt, and Ed have taken shelter. Pumpkinhead captures Bunt, and Ed stumbles out of the barn but is accidentally stabbed in the back by a pitchfork. Both Ed and Pumpkinhead cry out in pain, and Pumpkinhead releases Bunt. Ed notices that Pumpkinhead's head is turning more human, then realizes that he and Pumpkinhead are one. The only way to kill the monster is to die himself. Pumpkinhead grabs Tracy by the neck, but before he can kill her, Ed shoots himself in the head. Pumpkinhead momentarily collapses to the ground, then grabs Bunt again. Tracy takes the gun from Ed, and Ed begs her to finish him off. Ed, now fully metamorphosed, tries to attack Tracy. She shoots him, and both he and Pumpkinhead die. Tracy, Bunt, and Chris watch as Pumpkinhead bursts into flames, Later that night, the witch buries Ed in Pumpkinhead's grave, ready for the next person seeking vengeance, and Ed is wearing the necklace that his son Billy made him the day he was killed. Vengeance only ends with more tragedy, not closure. The end. I hope you all liked that one. That'd be my favorite. Now then, time for your review.
Fuck you.
Do this, or you die. Slow like.
Okay, I will. I will.
Pumpkinhead is a 1988 American horror film. It was the directorial debut of special effects artist Stan Winston, who was best known for doing the special effects for Terminator 2 and Alien before directing a movie. This film being directed by an effects man shows, since the effects are great, with Pumpkinhead still looking good to this day. And like I said, that's not surprising, seeing as how this is Stan Winston, the same dude who made the special effects for Terminator 2 and Alien. The movie's plot is told fairly well, but it does feel a bit rushed, but the ideas and lore are interesting and really cool. It's a good supernatural film, but is also a secret Southsploitation film. Despite the fact the film never states where it is set, its setting is very southern feeling and feels as though it avoided having a set in stone state, as to make it feel like this could happen in any southern state. The film uses the voodoo cliche, the cliche of southern people being dirty, and the cliche of southern people being superstitious, and also the cliche of southern people being unhelpful for the most part, with like 2 exceptions, the main character and the boy. But aside from that, a lot of the characters just try to keep themselves away from the whole Pumpkinhead thing. This is a classic movie. It isn't as well known as it should be, which is sad since there's a lot to like here. But the film was successful enough to gain 3 low-budget crappy sequels and an obscure comic run. But how Southsploitation is Pumpkinhead? I say it's pretty Southsploitation despite never actually mentioning where it's set. 8 out of 10.
So kind, Dan. I got 2 more stories to tell y'all.
Please, let us go.
Shut up! You speak when I says you can. Now then, this next story be my absolute favorite. Be about a group of teens who come down to Texas and wind up being victims of a chainsaw massacre. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Sally Hardsteady, her paraplegic brother Franklin, and their friends Jerry and Kirk and Pam will visit the grave of the Hardsteady's grandfather in rural Texas to investigate reports of vandalism and grave robbing. Afterwards, they decide to visit the old Hardsteady family homestead. Along the way, they pick up a hitchhiker who talks about his family and who worked at the old slaughterhouse and how they used to kill the cows by bashing their brains in with a hammer. He borrows Franklin's pocket knife and he cuts himself, then takes a single Polaroid picture of Franklin, for which he demands money. When they refuse to pay, he burns the photo and slashes Franklin's arm with a straight razor. The group forces him out of the van and drive on. They stop at a gas station to refill their vehicle, but the owner tells them that the pumps are empty. They decide to head on and come back tomorrow. But the owner protests and asks them to stay, saying that it's not safe out there and how some folk just don't like outsiders. They continue towards their homestead anyway, intending to return to the gas station once it has received a fuel delivery as they had planned. When they arrive, everyone heads into the old house and leaves Franklin behind. Franklin is mad about this. Franklin does notice an odd symbol on the truck and worries it might be a marker, but is told by one of the guys just to not worry about it. Franklin sees strange bone art in the old house and gets even more worried. Franklin tells Kirk and Pam about a local swimming hole when they ask him, and the couple goes off to try and find it. They stumble upon a nearby house, and Kirk calls out for gas, entering through the unlocked door while Pam waits outside. A large mute man wearing a mask made from human skin suddenly appears and kills Kirk with a hammer, dragging him deeper into the home. Pam soon enters looking for her lost boyfriend. Wander around and she trips into a room filled with furniture made from human bones. She attempts to flee, but Leatherface catches her and impales her on a meat hook, making her watch as he butchers Kirk with a chainsaw. Jerry heads out to look for Pam and Kirk at sunset. He sees the house and finds Pam barely alive inside a freezer. Before he can react, Leatherface kills him by hitting him in the back of the head with the same hammer. As night begins to fall, Sally and Franklin set out to find their missing friends. Franklin tries to talk Sally out of doing it, but goes along anyway. As they near the neighboring house and call out, Leatherface lunges from the darkness and guts Franklin with a chainsaw. Sally runs toward the house looking for help and finds the desiccated remains of an elderly couple upstairs. Leatherface cuts through the front door and corners her upstairs. She escapes from Leatherface by jumping through a second-floor window and flees to the gas station. The owner calms her with offers of help, but then he ties her up, gags her, and forces her into his truck. He then drives back to the house, arriving at the same time as the hitchhiker from before, now revealed as Leatherface's brother and the gas station owner's son. The gas station owner tells his son, the hitchhiker, to go home and get his brother. Once home, Sally wakes up at a dinner table, and the men torment the bound and gagged Sally, while Leatherface, now dressed as a woman, serves dinner. Leatherface and the hitchhiker bring down one of the desiccated bodies from upstairs, that of their grandpa. He's actually alive, and he sucks blood from a cut on Sally's finger. They decide that Grandpa, the best killer in the old slaughterhouse, should kill Sally. He tries to hit her with a hammer multiple times as the other men cheer, but he is just too weak and he fails. And in the ensuing struggle, Sally breaks free, leaps through a window again, and flees to the road. Leatherface and the hitchhiker give chase, but the hitchhiker is run over by a truck and killed. Sally leaps into the truck's passenger seat and tells the man to drive. Leatherface attacks the truck with his chainsaw, and both escape the truck. The driver knocks Leatherface down with a pipe wrench, causing the chainsaw to cut Leatherface's leg. The driver flees, and Sally escapes in the back of a passing pickup truck as Leatherface maniacally flails his chainsaw in the air in anger and defeat. And Sally stares into the distance as she is taken far, far away from this horrible trauma and danger, traumatized after being the only survivor of her group. The killers were never caught, and the crimes were never solved. The end. Reminds me of my youth.
Review?
Of course.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 1974 American slasher film directed by Tobe Hooper, and follows a group of teens who are systematically killed, blah 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 blah, you know the whole deal. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is quite possibly the most famous Southsploitation film ever made, and one of the most popular slasher films. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is quite possibly one of the most famous Southsploitation films ever made, despite the fact the genre isn't even known by anyone but me, because I kinda sorta made it up. And it is very easy to see why, because this film is still very effectively scary and disturbing all these years later. It is not only a great slasher flick, but the best example of good Southsploitation. It takes its Texas setting and puts it front and center. It's not afraid to take the tropes and stereotypes of the South and make it the movie. Wrong Turn and Bubba are similar. The villains are even based off a real Southern monster, Ed Gein, the man who made his furniture and lamps and all that out of human bones. Now in the movie, they actually kill people. No one really knows if Ed Gein even killed anybody, but they do know that he dug up graves and used the bones to make his furnitures. But nonetheless, the villains in this movie are based off of Ed Gein, which is, well, a Southern true horror story. And the villains in this movie would be used as inspiration for Southsploitation cinema for years to come. Prime example is Wrong Turn, which has a very similar cast of villains, with them even being a trio of baddies, and them being cannibalistic murderers. Only all of them are like Leatherface. You want the Southern Grindhouse? Well, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the Southern Grindhouse. This movie is an absolute 10 out of 10. The most 10 out of 10 out of this entire list.
Thank you, boy. Them very kindly words.
Can we go now?
Oh, sure thing. Y'all be free to go after dinner. And my final story. My last story will be about rednecks who turn zombie after drinking toxic waste. It's a funny one.
Dinner? What's for dinner?
Well, he's all for dinner.
The fire's getting stronger. You don't have a chance. Here comes the end. They're gonna get you big. Your heart's full of greed, but you never succeed. What have you done with them? They are screaming, can't you hear them? Can't you hear them? Did you ever lose a tear? No, 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 no. You never got a feeling. There's a fire burning out on the street. I can't bear this heat. You claim it was my fault, but I know it was you still hiding the truth. What have you done with them? They are screaming, can't you hear them? Can't you hear them? Did you ever lose a tear? No, 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 no. You never got a feeling. And you hear them? The fire's getting stronger. You don't have a chance. Here comes the end. They're gonna get you big. Your heart's full of greed, but you never succeed. I need you, baby. I never do what you want. I never do what you need. Don't treat me, honey, like a slave on your ground. I never go on my knees. You stupid boy, don't know that love always wins. They already broke open the door, so don't ignore that jail is the only weight of all your sins. Whoa, there's a fire burning out on the street. I can't bear this heat. You claim it was my fault, but I know it was you still hiding the truth. What have you done with them? They are screaming, can't you hear them? Can't you hear them? Did you ever lose a tear? No, 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 no. You never got a feeling. The fire's getting stronger. You don't have a chance. Here comes the end. They're gonna get you big. Your heart's full of greed, but you never succeed. I need you, baby. I never do what you want. I never do what you need. Don't treat me, honey, like a slave on your ground. I never go on my knees.
There you go. You feel a little lightheaded with a lot of talking. I've lost that accent so many times. It changed so many times.
It's fine.